Good evening, everyone. I'm Yaakov Katz, a senior fellow at JPPI, the Jewish People Policy Institute, and I'm joined tonight by other two senior fellows, my colleagues Shmuel Rosner and Gil Troy. We will start this evening, as we've been doing for the last 2 weeks and a bit since the war broke out here in Israel, yet to have a name, something that Yedidia Stern, the president of JPPI, has written about what should be the name of this war, but that will be something to talk about another time. But tonight what we're going to do is we have an interview with Donon Almog, the chairman of the Jewish Agency. Donon Almog is a former head of the IDF Southern Command many years ago, served with distinction in the Israeli military, but also has faced unimaginable tragedy in his own family. 20 years ago, he speaks about this in the interview, the loss of family members in a suicide bombing in Haifa. Now, more recently in Kfar Aza, family members murdered, some taken hostage and abducted by Hamas. So we'll start with Donon Almog, the interview with Donon Almog, and then we will have a really interesting presentation by Shmuel Rosner with results from a very fresh and recent poll done by JPPI to tap in and to understand a little deeper the sentiments today in Israel. But here we go with Donon Almog. Jewish Agency Chairman Donon Almog, thank you very much for joining us at JPPI. I thought we'd start with your family. Your cousin, I think it's your first cousin, Giora Almog. His family was living in Nachal Oz, and they were hit very...
No, not Nachal Oz, Kfar Aza.
Kfar Aza, I'm sorry, Kfar Aza.
Giora Almog and Shlomit, for many years living in Kfar Aza. And also Goldstein family, Gogo and Varda, parents of Nadav. Nadav Goldstein, soldier in Sayeret Matkal, the manager, legendary manager of Kafrit. Kafrit is a plastic modern industry of Kfar Aza. Industry that is praised by all the customers and the kibbutz, a source of income of the kibbutz. So Nadav was killed. I was in their home. Nadav is killed today, this afternoon, 4 p.m. in Shfaim. Nadav will be buried together with Yam, 19 years old soldier in Israel Defense Forces, communication corps. And the rest 4 are taken hostage. Chen Almog Goldstein. Chen is the daughter of Giora and Shlomit from Kfar Aza. And Chen right now held by Hamas as hostage together with Agam, 17 years old, another daughter, sister of Yam, and 2 boys, Gal and Tal, 11 and 9. I don't know if you pay attention, but all the names taken from water.
Yeah.
Why Yam, 19 years old, she...
For our listeners, Yam is sea, ocean, Gal is a wave, Agam is a lake. Yes.
Yeah. And Yam was born, she's now 19, she was born shortly after the massacre of 5 from my family in Maxim restaurant in Haifa. 20 years ago, October, a day before Yom Kippur, 5 members from my family were killed.
It was a suicide bombing attack.
A suicide, a woman supposedly pregnant, came from Jenin. She was lawyer, 28 years old, just came between Zeev Almog, my uncle, and his wife Ruti. Zeev was 71, a legendary officer, commander in our Navy, was the commander of the Naval Academy in Akko, a submarine commander. He was the commander of the Leviathan submarine, a twin sister to the Dakar. Israel bought 2 submarines in the United Kingdom. 1968, he was the commander of the Leviathan. The Dakar sank along the cruise. So Zev was killed. His wife, Ruti, Holocaust survivor, she was 70. Moshik, their son, 43, and 2 grandsons. Asaf, and Tomer, 9 and 11. There were 9 around the table. Donon Almog, now he was 10, now he's 30. He lost his sight, he's blind. He spoke in the United Nations a few years ago on behalf of the victims of terror families, funding terror by the Palestinian Authority. He graduated the Reali School, the same school that I was graduated. He joined Sayeret Matkal as blind soldier.
Wow.
Blind soldier. His sister Adi was the little one in the bombing, in Maxim bombing. She is now 24, and she is serving as officer in the Navy,
So
like her grandma. And she started in our Shayetet 13. Adi. Omri was
Doron,
on the way.
I have to ask you though. I mean,
Yeah.
so much tragedy, and you're just
Yeah.
one family. You're one family. 20 years ago.
Yes.
Now what your family's going through today. How
And I wanted,
how do people move on? How do they keep living?
I-
What do you say to people?
I want to tell you, Avrutsky family, my family, originally I'm Avrutsky, I changed to Almog because of Zeev Almog, the submarine commander who was murdered 20 years ago. My family came from Ukraine, from Russia, from Odessa, from Makarov, from Kiev, 1910, after the pogrom of 1903. They decided to take responsibility on their life, come to Palestine at that time under the Turks.
Mhm.
Buy land near Kfar Saba, build communities, and be tough here. But take initiative and move forward. They I think that they initially they were religious, but they decided to leave this culture, the religious culture, take responsibility, and don't wait to the Messiah. Initiate the life forward.
Not Zionism.
Zionism. They were Zionists. And my parents born here in Israel under the British mandate. My father in 1927 in Kfar Saba. My mom in Rishon LeZion 1929. And both of them, I think the dream of their life was building a Jewish state.
Right.
And be ready to give our life, be ready to sacrifice our life for this only Jewish state. That was their dream, my parents' dream. And their sacrifice of my parent generation, what we call the silver plater generation, the Alterman poet, the silver plater. I think they gave us power. They gave us the readiness to sacrifice our life, every single minute of our life. And they gave us the feeling that the state of Israel is more important than our life as individual. As a community, we must be tough. Right now, I wrote to some people in Israel about our policy right now in this war. The Iron Sword, or for me, it's not Iron Sword, it's a war of Simchat Torah. My brother was killed in Yom Kippur War 50 years ago, left behind, bleeding 7 days near his burning tank. And I did my oath near his burning tank to continue saving my country. And now, few days after the Yom Kippur, we have another tragedy, the Simchat Torah war. In the next 50 years, I don't see Simcha. I don't see in this date of Simchat Torah when so many people were killed. But what I'm saying, I see a picture of my mom on the water tower of Kibbutz Negba, July 12, 1948. That was the day that the Egyptian army, who siege over Kibbutz Negba, started evacuating and leaving the battlefield near Kibbutz Negba due to his losses. But all the cows in Kibbutz Negba were dead. Many were killed, but they didn't leave the kibbutz. they didn't leave the community. Now we know every day you hear about more communities that are taken from the north to the center, from the south to the center, and a lot of complaint. We need to be tougher. A lot of complaint of mayor, regional council mayors or head and so on. We are in a war. This is existential for us to be tough.
But we also, I want to touch upon what you were talking about with your mother and that image from Kibbutz Negba. We also will have to rebuild. And that's going to be a big national project, right? The scenes of what happened down there. And you've been down to the kibbutzim, Kfar Aza, I'm sure, and others.
Yes.
This is a massive project, right? I'm guessing that
yes, absolutely. You see from one side, I saw from one side, you see the plantation, the green all over in the kibbutz, and the destruction and the barbarian of the brutal and the pogrom. It's a pogrom what happened to the kibbutzim. But you see, it's a two cultures standing opposing each other. From one side, the jihadists, the extremists, the Islamists, brutal slaughter, and the kibbutz culture. The kibbutz culture is building industry like kafrit, plastic industry, looking to the future for a better generation, for tikkun olav, for loving, peaceful society. Totally different culture. And yes, we did a mistake. We set ourselves in a kind of illusion, in a bubble of illusion about Hamas, about Hamas being deterred, about the ability to defend ourselves by a thin line of around Gaza with the best technology and few soldiers, and inside the communities, the kibbutzim were not prepared. Okay, this is failure. But right now, we need to gather our energy to collect ourselves, take ourselves from the grief and sorrow, and move forward. And we need to be tougher in the Middle East. And for the Jewish Agency, one of the biggest projects that will be leading is the Gaza envelope.
Gaza communities,
rehabilitation, Otef Aza, what we say, Otef Aza, Gaza envelope rehabilitation, about 20 kibbutzim and the communities and the towns, and bring Jews from all over the world to assist us, volunteer, olim chadashim, newcomers, and a boost of young generation from all over the world.
So what do you tell, before I let you go, Doron, what do you tell Jews around the world who are watching us now, and if they're asking, what can they do? How can they help the situation right now?
Number one, be aware there is only one Jewish state, and we navigate ourselves. And I know there's a lot of criticism about Israel and what happened, the polarization of the discussion in our society in the last 10 months. Yes, we did huge mistake. Solidarity is the most important thing. You know that the religious man, the religious Jew pray every day and say, "Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol mo'odcha, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." Love is a leading idea in Judaism. Without love, we don't have solidarities, we don't have family, we don't have life.
Right.
And love is a leading idea in our Judaism. And number one, remember, there is only one Jewish state that was born 3 years after Second World War, after 6 million Jews were slaughtered and killed, industry of killing. And it's our generation, it's our responsibility to guarantee the existence of the third temple. The third temple is shaking right now. Israel is a danger. The Jewish people, if there is no state of Israel, all the Jews around the world are less secure.
Right.
So all the Jews in the world must gather, support Israel. How to support Israel? Number one, love Israel. Show solidarity, empathy. Raise money, a lot of money. Yes, we need a lot of money to Israel for the rehabilitation. In the Jewish Agency, we have the Victims of Terror Fund, established 21 years ago. And we support every family, every victim of terror by 4,000 shekel immediately in cash, number one. And we need more. We need more. Just for that, we need about $80 million. And this is right now. And number two, the long-term project which will take maybe 5 years or 10 years, to return the communities to the kibbutzim, to build stronger kibbutzim, and also to understand that some will not return.
Yeah.
Some are unable, some having trauma, huge trauma, some lost their loved one. So in their home, so how the children are slaughtered, and they won't return. And we need to hug them. We need to support them wherever they live, a new place. But we need a new blood. We need to bring young generation. There are 6 million Jews in the United States. I expect that 1 million will come to stand with us, to live with us. We have, for instance, we have a Talpiot project in Israel for the genius of the Jewish people here in Israel, some of them going to Shmone Matayim, then to IDF unit and so on. Yes, I want the Jewish identity to do Talpiot, Masa Talpiot.
Right.
Masa Talpiot, about 8 million Jews all over the world, if according to Halakha. Not according to Halakha, we have 18 million Jews. And for me, all of them Jews. And we need to bring the most successful, those with energy, with power, to continue standing with us, fighting for the state of Israel, building Israel, giving a hope to all of us, to each of us, that the state of Israel will be strong and flourish.
Yes.
And a source of pride for every Jew in the world.
Well,
so, yes, this is a crisis time. We can do more, and we'll do partnership, a community in the United States, in Mexico, in Australia, and South Africa, taking one community in Israel, one kibbutz, adapt and support by volunteers, sending the 18 years old, the 17, the 21, doctors, nurses, administrative. Yes, support Israel by all means, by all power.
Okay.
By volunteer, by money, by prayer, by media, right? Speak about it. Speak that Israel is a place of justice. And what we do, yes, we are not operating according to the jihad standard. We do not slaughter.
Right. I want to thank you, Jewish Agency Chairman Donon Almog. Thank you so much for joining us here at JPPI, and our condolences and our prayers for your family that are still being held in Gaza.
Stand tall, together will prevail, and like the phoenix from ashes, will build a stronger Israel, Jewish, democratic, free and liberal country. Thank you so much, Yaakov.
Amen. So that was quite, I think, the powerful interview from Donon Almog, really one of Israel's war heroes, but also, this tragedy that has, and we've spoken about this a few times here, Shmuel and Gil, about the just how everywhere it strikes everyone throughout the country. There's no home that we do not know someone who has been killed, who has been hurt, who has been taken hostage. But I want to make a sharp turn for a moment, hand over the reins to Shmuel. And Shmuel, you're going to show us some of the slides and the results from the recent JPPI survey, and then we'll talk about them, what they mean, what their significance is. So Shmuel, just unmute yourself, and the show is yours.
Yeah, I hope that you see the slides, and if you do, then we can go over the slides. Let me first say that this is a survey conducted by JPPI late last week. Professor Camille Fuchs of Tel Aviv University was in charge of looking into the numbers and make sure that our sample is representative of the Israeli population. We sampled 600 Jews and 200 Arabs. Most of the results that you'll see here are representing the Jewish population, because obviously when it comes to issues of war and peace, the Arab population is different in many ways, and its opinions tend to be much more critical of Israel and of the government, and should be discussed in a separate way. So let me just dive into we brought here 5 slides. The first of which is a natural continuation of the interview we just saw with Donon Almog. It's a testimony to the determination of the Israeli public to achieve something following the tragedy of 2 weeks ago. The Shabbat HaShchora, the Black Shabbat we had 2 weeks ago, was a tantalizing event. It was an earthquake in Israeli society, and I think the implication of which will continue to reverberate for months and maybe even years. But right now, Israel is at a war. The atmosphere in Israel is one of a war situation, and Israelis are expecting to win the war, and they certainly believe that Israel is on its way to win the war. We gave people ladder of 5 with 5 stages. Do you believe that Israel is going, or your level of confidence that Israel is going to win the war, from 1, which means no confidence, to 5, complete confidence? What we see here is the summary of those who said 4 and 5, the two top numbers. And as you can see, in the general public, the general Jewish public, almost 75% believe that Israel is going to win the war. There is a slight difference. The confidence among coalition supporters is slightly higher than the confidence of opposition supporters, but even among opposition supporters, it's more than 70%. So generally speaking, the public is expecting victory, is certain of victory. And of course, this creates a certain anticipation. So now the government and the IDF have the burden of proof to show the public that Israel can actually win the war. Next slide. Just 3 weeks ago, Israel was a highly divided society. For almost a year, we were fighting and bickering over things that currently seem almost marginal in their level of importance. Things related to the character of Israel as a Jewish and democratic society, legislation concerning the exact structure of the legal system. All this did not disappear, but it has moved to the sidelines. And right now, Israelis by and large feel that Israeli Jewish society is either very unified. More than a quarter of respondents said Israel is very unified or somewhat unified. As you can see, more than 80% of Israelis believe that Israel is a unified society. This is an unthinkable number if you compare it to the situation in Israel just merely 3 weeks ago. It's a complete change of outlook. The circumstances are tragic, but what we see here is encouraging. In some sense, Israelis did rise to the occasion and did understand that this is not the time to keep our divisions as the main characteristic of our society. They did understand that volunteering working to unify society, working to support the soldiers and the citizens that were hurt. That's the mission that we must address. On the other side, or on the less encouraging type of news, confidence in the government is not very high. It's also not very low, but it's not very high. 50% of the Jewish population do not have high confidence in the current Israeli government. And we already asked about the emergency government. So that's not the pre-unity or emergency government. This is the new government, the emergency government that includes the previous coalition, plus the Mamlachti camp, the party headed by General Benny Gantz. And still, the public does not have high confidence that this government can address the challenges ahead. Trust in the IDF is much higher, and this is not an obvious thing to say because the military already acknowledged a failure 2 weeks ago. It's clear that the military failed to anticipate the attack by Hamas and failed to prevent the attack by Hamas. So you would suspect, or you might think, that confidence in the IDF is going to be much lower at this stage, but that's not the case. Confidence in soldiers, in the soldiers who are now situated along the Israeli border, is as high as 98%, which basically means we all have confidence in the soldiers. And confidence in the high command, in the officers of the IDF, is also quite high, 75%. Again, an encouraging sign. And if we move back to the political leadership, again, we see this dichotomy: high confidence in victory, high confidence in the military, high confidence in the ability of our society to unite, but the politics gets in the way, and the politicians do not enjoy such high confidence. These are the three members of the small cabinet, the emergency cabinet. We have Benny Gantz, the head of the Mamlachti camp. We have Defense Secretary Yoav Gallant, and we have the Prime Minister Netanyahu. So for Gantz and for Gallant, the confidence is, I'd say, okay, although not in a war situation. You'd expect more confidence in the defense minister in a situation of war than the 50-something% that Yoav Gallant has here, and confidence in the prime minister. Prime Minister Netanyahu was a divisive figure for many years, and even more divisive figure in the last year. And if you expected the war situation to improve his ratings, if we expected to see a situation of rallying behind the flag and supporting the prime minister, that's not the case for Israel. We rally around the flag to support the IDF, to believe in victory, but Prime Minister Netanyahu still has very low level of confidence. I'll end here, Yaakov, and you'll take it from here.
What I think, and you just summed it up, high confidence in our ability to win, high confidence in our soldiers, particularly the soldiers, little different with the commanders. That nuance is actually interesting, because the commanders are probably the ones who they messed up that this all was allowed to happen, but the soldiers we all love, of course, we all have soldiers, so how can you be against the soldiers? Netanyahu, though, I find very interesting, and Gil, I mean, you're a historian, you've written books and books about US presidents. Usually, like when they go to war, they start high, right? And then they start to come down, right? I think it was Bush, right? 9/11, big disaster, goes to war relatively high. As the war goes on, starts to come down. Netanyahu is starting this low, maybe thinking that he can go up as time goes on, right? So do you see that dynamic potentially here?
First, I just have to go back to Donon Almog. What an amazing person. This is a guy who had a special needs kid and created a whole village for special needs children. Right. This is a man who's not just a general, not just has fought for the Jewish people, but also fights for humanity. And the level of pain that this man has to go through, and yet his strength is something that's just so important for us to emphasize. And that's the kind of leader we need. That's the kind of leader we need. I fear that Bibi Netanyahu is playing like the Entebbe card, and he's imagining that we're going to pull some rabbit out of our hat, and within days we're going to either free hostages or Hamas is going to collapse, and then there are going to be victory parades, and everybody's going to forget what happened October 7th. I actually, as an American historian, am thinking about Lyndon Johnson. In 1964, he wins one of the greatest landslides in American history. He had been his entire life waiting to be president, and he builds this great society, and he's moving along, and then he gets mired in Vietnam. And in March 1968, even though he could run for re-election, he gives an extraordinary speech in which he says, I need to de-escalate this war. I need to lead us out of this war. I need us to lead us to whatever kind of victory we can. And so I'm not going to run again. And Lady Bird Johnson wrote, the speech was magnificently delivered. Those who love him must have loved him more. And those who hate him must have at least thought, here is a man. I think the time has come for Bibi Netanyahu to say, my political career is over. I am not going to run again for re-election. I'm going to resign when this war is over. But I'm going to do everything possible to unite the society, to heal the society, to win this war, and to position Israel to be the kind of Israel I spent 18 years, and in fact, my entire life trying to build. And people like Donon Almog and you wonderful people have also been trying to build. That's what he should do. This is not a prediction of what he will do.
You know, what I find, very interesting in the results, put aside the soldiers issue for a moment, is the fact that we are united, right? What was the result there, Shmuel? About 80% of the country feels somewhat united. There was somewhat and strongly united. And that's so high. And we all know where we were just a few weeks ago, as you mentioned, right? We were the most divided ever. So we're so united, but just not behind our leader. And what we all know what brought us here, right? You know, the division and the judicial overhaul. We're not going to go back and look at that right now. But I do want to ask the both of you, what steps potentially could Netanyahu be doing to try to rebuild trust? And let me just add to that the fact that Netanyahu is obviously the prime minister, but the whole government here is not functioning the way it should be. I mean, you hear stories over and over where the finance ministry is not giving the economic financial support, the people who are now 360,000 reservists. That means 360,000 people who could be losing income, right? You have major anxiety around that. You have the welfare services are not working. What's going to happen to the people who need to move? Where are they going to go when this war is over, who had been evacuated from that Gaza borderline area and communities? Where are they going to live? Where are the kids going to go to school? Where are they going to work? How are they going to make money and make a living? People feel that the government has abandoned. I mean, I know things that I've worked on since the war has begun, very much in like the Hasbara world. Also there, you just don't see the functioning of what a government is supposed to do. And you see what's happened at the prime minister's office, just kind of bringing back all the people who used to work there are now back in the prime minister's office, because that's all he could pull together. So I'd like to hear from the two of you. I'll start with you, Shmuel. What can the prime minister do, and what can the government really practically do? Okay, we had our problems. Let's look forward. Can we rebuild trust?
Well, I think Gil just gave him good advice. One of the issues with Prime Minister Netanyahu is that many Israelis still see him as someone who's maneuvering his way through the crisis in the hope that he can remain prime minister when this is over. Gil proposed that he'll say now, I'm not going to remain in office after the war, and I'm going to focus all my attention on winning the war. If he makes such move, then people might say, okay, we now believe him that he does not engage in political maneuvering rather than thinking only about winning the war. So that's one option. The other option is to have a great victory. We all pray and hope that Israel will be victorious in the coming war. The war hasn't yet started in a real sense. If Israel, in some miraculous way, pulls a 6-day war out of a hat, and we are all stunned by a dramatic victory, this, of course, could alter the current political situation. But in all other scenarios, I think it will be very difficult for the prime minister to regain the trust and the support of the people, as long as he is seen as someone who didn't completely ditch the political part of his activity. As long as he's seen as someone who engages in politics during a time of war, the public will be highly suspicious of him, and I must say for good reason.
Gil, what do you think?
I think he has to shift immediately from a politics of division and demagoguery and now ducking, because he just seems to be avoiding the public, and go to, and I know it's a really crazy concept for Israelis, good governance. To your list of your litany of all the things that have gone wrong, I'll add the fact that in my own neighborhood, so many people are scared because we don't feel like there's enough of an infrastructure of police and of civil guards, let alone those people who want to get weapons to be able to get weapons after proper training. So there seems to be a general governmental breakdown. So we have to start seeing real good governance. And part of that is changing the leadership team, keeping some of the core people, but also bringing in fresh blood and making it very clear that these people are being, for the first time in Bibi Netanyahu's career, being groomed to take over, being groomed for next generation, and find people not who specialize in a politics of demeaning somebody else who dares to disagree with them, but a politics of true leadership, of administrative savvy, and of expertise. And we've lost that skill. And if he, in the next couple of months, can at least start doing that, again, not a prediction, but a challenge and a hope. If he can at least start showing, yes, I know how to run a ship, like I used to do in the 1990s, like I used to do when I made Israel Startup Nation, and I can bring in a leadership team, and I can start making changes. I'm not going to be held hostage to the latest crazy person in my cabinet, and I'm going to find a patriotism, and when I reach out across the aisle, then we have a chance to go forward after this awful crisis ends, because there will be a day after, and everybody keeps on talking about the day after, meaning recriminations and what lessons we have to learn. It's more important for me to talk about the day after in the terms that Donon Almog was: building, dreaming, working together, remembering how we have to love one another and look out for one another, each other's backs, and create a new culture of good governance.
And let me just add to those remarks that, and Shmuel, you said this, right? The war hasn't really, to some extent, begun, right? Sadly, we have this feeling that we've lost before it even began, with that massacre and the loss of so many lives and so many people. But whatever happens now, whether it's just a ground incursion in Gaza, or, and my concern really is much more up north with what's happening there, and I think that things will shift potentially with the focus also of the IDF, but depending on what happens in the north, we will need a resilience, the likes of which we have not had to pull out of ourselves and drawn for a long, long time, and to go into this challenge and this confrontation that still is to come without a trust in your leader is not good, right? And this is a problem for Israel, I think, and we have to find a way. I think the tips that you've given, if Netanyahu is listening, they're worthy of consideration. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to thank Shmuel for the presentation, Gil for your amazing feedback as usual, and of course to Donon Almog for those really inspirational remarks. And we will be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. here from the Jewish People Policy Center, JPPI in Jerusalem.